What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Wise.
Dr. Jeremy Weiss here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. I'm Dennis Yu of BlitzMetrics. And Dennis, before I formally introduce you, I always like to point out other episodes people should check out of the podcast. And a big shout out and love to Leanna Ling, who introduced us via email. And she's CEO and owner of AdSkills, a great platform. Check it out. Also, Perry Marshall, separately without knowing, also introduced us. Great books, 80-20 Sales and Marketing. I don't know if you, Dennis, you'd call him one of the early gurus of Google Ads. How would you describe Perry to people?
Perry's the OG of Google Ads. He wrote the book, literally.
Yeah. So Perry Marshall and many, many more. Check them out on InspiredInsider.com. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. And at Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We're an easy button for a company to launch and run a podcast, and we do the accountability, the strategy, and the full execution. And Dennis, we call ourselves kind of the magic elves that run in the background to make it easy for the host and the company so they could just develop great relationships, create great content, and sit back and relax and run their company. You know, for me, Dennis, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I know you're very much the same. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships, and I've found no better way over the past decade to profile the people and companies I most admire and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. If you have questions, go to rise25.com. We also created lots of free content on the podcast. Pretty much any question that we've gotten, we've produced an episode on it. So check it out. Dennis Yu is founder of BlitzMetrics. They do a variety of things that we're going to talk about: courses, coaching, done for you, you name it. They do it, they teach it, and they do it themselves. And he built the analytics at Yahoo as an early search engine engineer. So we'll talk about some SEO. He spent $1 billion on Google and Facebook ads. He's been interviewed on most of the major TV networks, newspapers, talking about digital marketing, AI, job creation. I think, Dennis, I was watching something with you. I don't know if it was CNN or Fox. What?
You probably saw me argue with Mark Zuckerberg on CNN in front of millions of people.
CNN, that's what it was. Yeah. So, Dennis, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Dr. Jeremy.
So just start off and give people a little bit of a sense of what BlitzMetrics does, because you do a lot of things.
The idea of digital marketing is, if you've got something good, how do you get more of it, right? So if you've got a successful chiropractic practice, how do you get more of the same kind of patients? And whether it's Google or Facebook or TikTok or email marketing or whatever, if you can provide the signal of happy patients, happy customers, happy people who are spending money on your products and services, then the system can do the work for you. And so we have a framework that allows people to do that. And that's the $1 a day program. And you can Google it. You can ask ChatGPT. Almost all the stuff is out there for free. It's not a surprise. It's not some secret. And it's just very basic, very fundamental, but very powerful. And so we just seek to put out these simple ways of doing things so that we just want to drain the swamp of all the gurus, right? Make it easy.
How did you?
We do offer coaching too, as you see. There's a 6-week implementation program which you pulled up on screen. If people want to pay us for help, but they can also just as easily go through the course themselves. They can watch the HubSpot course that we have on this, free. Almost all the stuff we have out there is free. But if they want our help, then we'll help. But that's not free.
Talk about when you first came up with this methodology and program.
So I'm a math guy, and I'm also kind of cheap. So I want to be able to test with the least amount of money because I'm spending my own money on ads. And the $1 a day principle came from when I first started running, I want to say it was Facebook ads back in like 2007, and the minimum budget was $1. And I found that about 1 in every 10 ads would work. So I thought, well, if it takes me, $1 a day to do testing, what's the minimum amount of money I can spend to test to find a winner? And I found that this idea of $1 a day works as a testing strategy. And we've done that for some huge companies, like for Rosetta Stone. put out a whole bunch of ads about how you can learn Spanish and told stories about, here's an ambulance driver who can speak Spanish and saves more patients because he can do that. Here's a businessman who flew to Paris to surprise his wife and speak French, right? Things like that. And we found that certain things would win. And if you get a winner, you can put $10 a day, $100 a day. Like Rosetta Stone, we spent $1 million a day. Not many people have done that. And we did it profitably. And we did that for Nike, for the Golden State Warriors, for Ashley Furniture, on and on. You can Google my name and you can see who we've done it with. And we think that most people, they just randomly come up with ideas. Maybe it's a Christmas campaign, maybe it's whatever, but they don't have a real structured testing strategy. So $1 a day is a way to take what's already working, chop it up into different components of strategy, which is goals, content, and targeting, and then have the system figure out how to isolate combinations of your audiences, combinations of the pain points you have, combinations of your product features, combinations of whatever, so the system can do the work for you.
What are some big mistakes people make? Even when they go through a program in general, or they're trying to optimize, what are some big mistakes?
They don't have their tracking in place. So they're not tracking their leads. If you don't send the signal back, then what is Google and Facebook or whatever going to do? They're just going to give you back people who've clicked on your ad, people who filled out a form. The biggest complaint I see among professionals. So these are doctors, these are attorneys, these are, professional service people, is that they say, I'm driving a lot of leads, but the leads are terrible quality. Yeah, they're terrible quality because you are not passing back the signal of who is a good lead. You're not passing back call reel data. You're not passing back, what happened in the CRM. So we see that all the time. And it's not a problem of Facebook or Google. It's a problem of garbage in, garbage out.
You obviously have studied and are an expert direct response, right? You have to be a bit. Who are some of the people that you learned from in the direct response universe?
I love Perry Marshall. Shoot, Perry Belcher is here in town. He's funny. Ryan Dice, all the classic OGs, Claude Hopkins. But DR is increasingly less about persuasion and copywriting, because that was a text newsletter, write these long email Dan Sullivan sorts of things. And now it's more about storytelling, which occurs in video. So all these OGs that were great at writing these 10-mile long letters have had to switch to video, have had to switch to, what Grant Cardone and Gary Vaynerchuk and these other guys do. I had Grant make some videos for me because I wanted to teach people, entrepreneurs, how to take a selfie with their phone and make 1-minute videos. And while we have a program on how to do that, and we have a whole 3-part framework on how to do that, there's nothing more powerful than just demonstrating it yourself, right? Don't tell me how to juggle, show me how to juggle. So Jeremy, if you do a search on Uncle G, Dennis Yu, and see what pops up, you'll see it's a super popular 1-minute video. And that shows the angle of how do you market in a way that isn't douchebaggy, doesn't make you a narcissist. You can even pull it up and play it. And that's what a lot of entrepreneurs and founders are missing. They're talking about themselves. All I see is them talking about themselves, which is, kind of chest beating, sycophantish. Why not have your community do it? Why not have people? Yeah, that first one there. Isn't it so much better when someone else is talking about you, right? So what does he say? Oh, Dennis wanted me to teach you how to make a 1-minute video. And then if you go maybe 40 seconds into that video, because it's a 1-minute video, he says, that guy you're working with, Dennis Yu, he's a bad, bad man. So just, go and click 2/3 of the way there and you'll see he's giving these tips, right? He's demonstrating it, not just talking about, oh, it's important to make a 1-minute video, right? He's a practitioner.
Practice what you preach, right?
Yeah. See, you got to have a hook. You got to have a punch. You got to get their attention. He's got food in his teeth. He's having breakfast with his daughter. He's not in a fancy studio. Does he have a fancy microphone? Did he rehearse this? See?
Yeah.
10x levels. And that dude you're working with, Dennis Yu, he's a bad, bad man.
Love it. Dennis, talk about, TikTok and the book you and Perry put out.
TikTok is all about 1-minute videos. Actually, now 15 to 20, 22-second long videos. So if you are a founder, you're an entrepreneur, you don't have to sing and dance. You're not there to try to go viral with all the kids out there. You're just sharing one tip. So, for example, I would ask you, Dr. Jeremy, what's one big mistake entrepreneurs make on podcasts? And you'd say, well, the one big mistake is blah, blah, blah. And you'd say that in 20 seconds, right? And what other one tip do you have? What other single moment do you want to share? Just little moments in time. And we've interviewed the top people on TikTok. And the problem that folks like you, me, Perry, even Liana have, it's called rambling old man syndrome, where we can't even get to the point, a minute in, and we're still introducing ourselves. You lost them in 3 seconds. They were already long gone. So I would ask you, can you make your point in a sentence? That's the point of TikTok. Can you get to the point? It's a lot easier to give an hour-long talk, a webinar, than it is to make a 1-minute video.
You want to hold up the book for a second just so people can check it out? And I'll pull it up right here. You can see the definitive guide to TikTok advertising. So what's, as you created the book, and I know you interviewed a lot of experts as well, what's one thing that surprised you?
How little I know. I've always been aware of Dunning-Kruger and how little I know. But when I came into this and TikTok paid us money to help write this book, because they know we're super well known for Google and Facebook ads. So they want us to dominate on TikTok and have people leave Facebook and do TikTok ads. Of course, that's what's behind it. But I thought, you know what? I'm a bit of a fraud. I'm almost 50. Who am I to be talking about TikTok, right? And I've only got a few thousand followers on TikTok. This is like hypocritical.
Right.
But as I learned, two things surprised me. One is that I actually do know more than I think, because if I highlight relationships, if I highlight moments in time, but I know how to avoid rambling old man syndrome, I can go viral. And I've gone viral, and I've gotten my friends who are not TikTok people who they would, social media is the last thing. I even got Perry Marshall for my birthday. I flew to Chicago to hang out with him, and we made a TikTok account and we made a whole bunch of TikToks together, and we didn't sing and dance. I asked Perry a bunch of rapid fire questions just off the cuff, and we turned those into little short clips, put a little background music, put the captioning like you saw the words there in the bottom. And that's all we needed for TikTok. And I've interviewed so many other people, freaking Dan Euland, who's the last one you'd ever expect to be. He runs Elite Student Coach. He is a, shall I say, high profile coach to high net worth parents. TikTok would be the last place you'd expect him or his clients to be. Yet, by interviewing him and pulling out these little moments, what's his favorite Korean restaurant in downtown LA? What was it like to be in the, what is that? The Magic Castle, right? He wrote the newsletter for the Magic Castle for that whole academy for magicians, right? What was that like being a magician? What was it like knowing so-and-so? Hey, what about this kid who got into Yale? What did they do? What's the key to get into these schools? Like all of these little one tip at a time, not 5 things, not tell me your whole life story. That's what I found interesting, is that when you just break it down in these little pieces, it's actually really easy. Biggest problem is how people just keep talking.
Who else was featured in the book? I know you had a lot of experts that you put in the book.
So we've got Perry and myself as the main authors, as practitioners. We've got various agency owners. We have other people who are entrepreneurs in some way. They have some kind of service business. They sell coaching. There's some product people. I think we have some young adults. One of them, like Noah, has, I think, 6 million followers on TikTok, and he has financial tips, that you can go to. How do you go to Starbucks and save money somehow by getting a free Starbucks? Or all, airline tricks, or all these people that are giving their tips. All of them, and it doesn't matter what their industry is, all of them in common are sharing real tips that are interesting.
I'm curious, Dennis, for you, when you were younger, what'd you want to be? when you grew up? I know you worked for American Airlines, you worked for Yahoo, London School of Business. What did you want to do when you were
I wanted to be a
younger?
professional distance athlete. I wanted to run
Distance athlete.
marathons. Yeah, I wanted to run for Nike. And I cut out the swooshes off of the shoes of my teammates and put them on the outside of a shoebox. I flew to the Louvre in Paris, where the actual Nike winged goddess of victory is. Took pictures of myself in front of it. I read the annual reports of Nike. Everything about Nike I knew. And my dream was I would run for Nike. And I sent my shoebox and I sent my fastest times. And as a 14-year-old, I had run 16 and change for the 5K, which is pretty fast. And I got this kind letter back from Shelley Bridges, the intern coordinator. And she said, sorry, Dennis, we can't sponsor you as an athlete. You need to make these world-class qualifying times. You got to run 12 minutes for the 5K. I'm like, 12 minutes? That's faster than 4 minutes per mile. I can't do that. For 3 miles at less than 4 minutes per mile. No one in the world has run those times, Shelley. This year, and as of this, the world record, of course, is faster than that, but no one in the world this year has run those times. And so I became very disillusioned. And then, long story short, eventually got Nike as a client. They paid me millions of dollars for analytics. And it was way better than if I was an athlete running for Nike, because a bunch of my friends were running for Nike and they would get injured and they would constantly be on the road. And you win a race, you make a couple $1,000s. It is not a glamorous thing. It is not what the 14-year-old Dennis thought it was. And when I visited Nike for the first time at their headquarters, I expected all these athletes to be running around and doing athlete sorts of things, but it was a big corporate office thing with meeting rooms and, shareholders, like all the kinds of corporate apparatus you'd expect. And it was just like, oh, that's not what I wanted, actually. Thank you. I'm glad I didn't do that.
What did you think of Shoe Dog?
I think that Phil Knight's an enigmatic character, and anyone who wants to write a biography will find different angles. You could have a Walter Isaacson, just like for Steve Jobs, write compelling books and tell these stories, and they're great. And there's so many stories that have been written about the founding of Nike and about Phil Knight, but nothing is as powerful as the actual autobiography, the words coming from the founder himself. So no slam against Shoe Dog or other books that are of that genre of, founder biographies. But I like watching Phil on these YouTube videos where he's giving lectures at Stanford. I like reading like Marriott by J. Willard Marriott, who founded the Marriott chain, or, Grinding It Out by the founder of McDonald's, Ray, who actually he didn't found McDonald's, he popularized it. Or, Lee Iacocca wrote his autobiography on Iacocca. You can still look at the biographies, but I think autobiographies are just way more powerful.
Any recent favorites? Books?
I would still go back to Steve Jobs. And, well, that was actually written by Isaacson. It wasn't Steve. I just love reading people's stories like this one. This is Josh Nelson. He's telling his story and how he built a 7-figure plumbing business. And it's not because he's trying to sell services. It's because he's speaking from his own experience. I just love people who talk about their own experience. It's authentic. It's theirs. Dan Ulan built a almost 7-figure coaching business single-handedly as a solopreneur. I think that's absolutely fantastic. I want to know how he did that as one person. I've got a ton of people on my team and I feel like I can't get enough done. How can one person do all that? So I want to know what he does. What's his magic, right? And that only comes through when it's the founder himself, not ChatGPT, not someone interviewing them on Zoom, which can help. Folks like you, Jeremy, can guide them, but your job is to pull the secret sauce. You said green elves, whatever, out of them and structure it.
I know you've done a lot of co-creation of content, and so I'd love to hear some of your favorites that you've worked with in co-creating content.
Well, I was just talking about Dan Ulan. So Dan Ulan's in LA, and this guy's an enigmatic character, speaks multiple languages, is just a savant, magician, professional musician, coaches super high net worth people, which you can imagine dealing with people in that world. And he flew out here to see me in Vegas a couple months ago. And we were up till 4 a.m. that first night. And he was up till 5 a.m. He saw the sun come up. And the thing that impressed me so much was we were here in this podcast studio just talking about the behind the scenes of what it's like working with super high net worth parents and the fears and dreams and pressure that comes with that. And what's it like having the staff, if you will. These people, they build bubbles around themselves to protect their time because a lot of them are celebrities. And so they're very private in a certain way. But seeing how they operate, seeing how they organize was killer because technically we were there to film videos to help tell his story and put a book out. But I just got so lost in the moment that I didn't realize that so much time went by. And then we spent the whole weekend like that. I think we met again at noon the next day. And then we went out to eat at Korean barbecue and we sang karaoke. And Will Troop, who's one of our young adults in our training program, he has an agency serving Dan. So he hung out and we did the same thing the next night, stayed up until 4. Like, you ever have those wild college sorts of days where you just go deep and you lose track of time, even though you've got like family responsibilities and things like that. And I love those kind of serendipitous moments because it wasn't planned. I was having a fantastic time, like hanging out with good friends, even though that was only the second time we ever met in person. We met via Zoom or whatever, like we're meeting in Zoom, which is not the same thing. And at the same time, we're doing business. And so when you have that synergy where you're with people you really like, you're really connecting and learning, it's, you're creating content at the same time. I think other people can feel like they're coming along. And that can be done without a $6,000 camera and a fancy studio. That can be done because of the nature of the quality of the ingredients that you have, of the people you have, of the preparation that's in place. And I think people see that.
I mentioned Dennis. Obviously, you built analytics at Yahoo as an early search engine engineer.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear what you learned from working at Yahoo.
Well, you would think, or at least I would have thought, coming into Yahoo, even in the early days, that they would have their act together, right? You're thinking, I know it's early, that they have this search engine. This is before Google. And I'm supposed to build this analytics, this central database showing what's going on. Like how much traffic do we have across all of our properties? At that time, we didn't have that many properties. Now it's, mail, shopping, search, finance, sports, automotive, whatever, dating. And I thought, well, there's got to be a central database already. I figured, there's some kind of like centralized code check-in process. And it turns out that every one of these teams, like the team that ran mail, the team that ran search, the team that ran dating or horoscopes, all built their own separate little silo. So I have the engineering skills to work with huge databases. But the skill that I actually needed was being able to build relationships with each of these groups that were building their own product. Because why would the people at Yahoo Mail want to give me the time of day? They're busy doing all the stuff they're trying to do. Why would they want to give me a feed so I can do I then bully them and say, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to tattle on you because, the executives need the big report. And if you don't give us the data, then they're going to get mad. And I'm going to have Dan Rosenzweig, who is our COO, send a nasty note to you that you don't cooperate. No, I couldn't do that. I had to play nice. So I had to take these other engineers out to lunch and just be really nice to try to convince them to work with me. And, the folks at Yahoo Sports would release some new fantasy sports product or whatever. And then that would break my system because anytime their system changed, it would break my system because they didn't tell me, right? Because my system's counting on certain data to come through in a certain way to be able to do the analytics overall across the whole ecosystem. And then I had to go, chase them down saying, hey, you guys changed your database. Our feed broke. Can you help me? So I would go play ultimate frisbee with these guys just to build friendships. And what I learned at Yahoo was we did some really cool technical things. Like we built a database that was beyond the limit of commercial databases. You couldn't even open the file, Dr. Jeremy, if you were there, right? We had to build our own operating system to handle this because the data volumes are so big. But aside from the technical feats, the most interesting part was, how do you build relationships with people who are the top in the internet? Like the guy 2Cubes for me invented PHP, Rasmus Lerdorf. David Farlow, I would see him 2 or 3 times a day. He was the richest man in the world under 40. I'd be peeing and he would walk up to the, and we'd be in the men's bathroom and pee at the urinal next to me and look at me and say, "Hey, Dennis, how was your weekend?" And I'm thinking, I'm taking a pee next to the richest man in the world under 40. What do I say to him? "Oh, I ran a 10K, What did you do, David? And so it's weird because when I first got to Yahoo, I was intimidated. I thought, they're going to expose me as being incompetent. They're going to kick me out immediately because I don't know. I am not at the level of these people who wrote the code that powers the internet. They're going to realize I'm a fraud. So I would try to avoid these people, but then I couldn't do my job because I had to pull all the data from all these places and make this centralized analytics platform that also helps serve ads and this kind of thing. And after a few months of that, some of these other people would come up to me, some of the most respected engineers on the planet, and they would say, "Hey, Dennis, I've got an issue with this database. Can you take a look at it and let me know what you think?" And I'd look at it and say, "Well, obviously you're going to do this. You're going to organize your database this way. And you should join this way. This is the way you should write that query." Like, I'm thinking, why are you asking me this obvious question? It's such an easy question, right? And then I realized, wait, these are people who are world-class in their particular thing. But then when they come look at my thing, which is data and analytics, stuff that looks really easy to me is actually a big deal to them. So I took for granted a bunch of things that, because I'd worked with so many huge databases and I knew how to compile data and build models, that I just had this blind spot, right? And I think all of us have this, where the thing that we do, like, you as a doctor of chiropractic, I'm sure there's things that are very mundane and obvious to you that are not to other people, that are magical, but you don't realize it's magical. So that just kind of struck me at Yahoo, that all these other people would want, and I felt like a fraud. They'd come and ask me these questions. "Hey, what do you think about this data model? Hey, can we analyze what's going on here with these ads? Hey, how should we tweak these campaigns?" And I would see instantly what the answer would be. Seemed obvious to me. And I didn't want to say, "You're an idiot. I can obviously see what you need to do to tune the campaigns. Your quality score is too low. And here's why," right?
Yeah, I love that. Really building relationships and also eventually realizing everyone has their thing and their special skill. It almost feels like magic to someone else, but to you, that's normal. Talk about SEO for a second. Obviously, being an early search engine engineer, what do you see as right now is a landscape of SEO and how people can improve their SEO?
Well, before you hit record, we did a search on your name, and we see that the number one result for your name is you. Thank goodness you own your own name, but it's your LinkedIn. And then the second one is Rise25/about, which is yours too. But Google doesn't know who you are that well, because Google is based on all these entities, which is put together in this framework called the knowledge graph, right? Which is like all these objects you can think of. It's like a giant molecule, if you will, right? And so I think about Dr. Jeremy Wise and Rise25 and your co-founder, Jonathan, those are all different objects, different nouns, right? If there's not a website for that object or your personal brand, then it makes it more difficult for Google to understand who you are, even though Google's super wise and they have all this AI and Bard and whatnot. And my view as a search engine engineer is very different than the view of the people that try to do SEO, because my job is to protect the search results from the people trying to trick us. So I have a very different view. And I would argue that if you look at it from my view, which is that of the search engine, you're going to completely demystify all the nonsense about SEO from the people trying to trick the engine, which are basically scammers. If you're trying to trick the search engine, you are a scammer. We do not have the same financial interests. You're not paying us. You're getting someone to pay you to do SEO. The people that we are friendly with are those who we have a shared economic interest. You're paying money for ads. We're going to build systems that will help you out because we win together. So Google and SEOs are basically, the police, which is us, and the thieves, which are these people selling SEO. So if you want to win in the world of SEO, Don't be a thief. Be honest. Share your stories. That's why Google, they changed their search guidelines to EEAT. So a lot of people in the world of SEO have freaked out because Google changed it from EAT to EEAT, which is that first E they added was experience. So when you share your experience and then expertise, authority, trust, which is the rest of it, then that's a real signal. That's not something that you can pay somebody to just fabricate using ChatGPT, just make up all these web pages using AI. Can't do that because it doesn't have real experience unless you're lying. You can hire someone to do your podcast to be able to pull the experience out. But what the search engine's looking for is real experience, not how many title tags and H1s and meta descriptions and sitemaps and weird SEO, techno babble. They're not looking for that. If you use WordPress, you're already 90% of the way there with what any SEO person could do. The real difference is you've got to create real content that other people share, meaning that's what drives links. The core of SEO is inbound links, like other people linking to you, not what you put on your website, which you can't hire someone. So if I wanted to help, let's say you run a chiropractic office and I wanted to help you get more patients in Chicago. If I'm not well connected in Chicago, and if I don't know personally about chiropractic, I can't help you with SEO because I've got to have topical authority and geographic relevancy. So the world of SEO is such that you can't, all these people want to argue with me, but I've never lost this argument in 30 years. You cannot sell SEO services. As much as people want to buy it, people will sell stuff that people want to buy. You cannot sell SEO services because SEO is the result. So let's say, Dr. Jeremy, I'm overweight. I've lost 54 pounds in the last year, right? I want to lose another 20. Can I just pay you $1,000 a month and you'll just lose weight for me? And all I do is just pay you money. I don't have to do anything. You'll just lose weight for me, right?
That'd be a tough one.
Yeah, but you're an expert at weight loss. It even says so on your website. You even told me that you're the world's best weight loss coach and weight loss expert. So I'm just going to pay you for weight loss, right?
Exactly. Not the
well,
case.
Wait, I have to do something for weight loss? You mean I have to eat a certain way? I have to, sleep. I have to, exercise. Yeah. So with SEO, someone can coach you on it. Someone can coach you on a podcast or can build your website and all that. But just like with weight loss, even if you have someone who really wants to help you, there's stuff that only you can do, right? As much as I want to help other people with SEO, as long as you can contribute that experience, happy clients, that kind of thing, then we have something to work with, right? And every agency should know this, but most don't because they're just selling a package because it's driven by a salesperson just trying to sell what people want.
Before we hit record, you said something about everything's SOPs.
Yep.
So talk about how you use SOPs in your business.
I like Gordon Ramsay, for example, right? I've eaten in his restaurants all over the place. And you ever watch these food shows? Maybe you have Rachel Ray or whoever you like to watch. And I'm one of those where I see a great meal. I will get the recipe. I'll order all the items from Whole Foods and have it delivered or whatnot. And then I'll make it. I'll actually follow the recipe. And most of the time, I can get that same result. Of course, it's a lot more effort than it looks on TV because you have to chop the things and all this preparing. But I've discovered that any kind of results can be traced back to an SOP. And in the world of digital marketing, everything is driven by an SOP. And everything I've ever done has been driven by an SOP because if I've done it, I try to see if I can replicate that result at least 3 times. And I turn that into a checklist of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then I give it to someone else saying, okay, here's how I use an SOP to be able to rank on somebody's name, or how to drive more leads for a plumbing company, or how to run Facebook ads to drive a particular result. Here's the checklist I used. Now, you, Dr. Jeremy, go follow that checklist. And if you're stuck, come back and ask me, but only ask me if you get stuck. And so this idea of learn, do, teach, which is as you've discovered a pattern that works, you put into an SOP, is something that my whole life has been built around. And maybe it's because I, was into math and these technical kinds of things that are all driven by frameworks and formulas, but I think everything's an SOP. And I think that if you want a repeatable result, if there's no SOP behind it, what are you going to do? I've flown 6.5 million miles, and I know that there's an SOP that pilot, the last flight I was on 2 days
Hope
ago.
so. Right.
2 days ago, there was a pilot who clearly was older in a good way, like, 60 something. And I know that every pilot, even if they've flown their entire career, they know it like the back of their hand or whatever, they still go through that pre-flight checklist, right? But there is a 20-year-old or 20-something-year-old, looked like a kid. He looked like 21. And it was his first time flying. And so the captain made an announcement and he said, hey, everybody, here's so-and-so. This is his first time flying. He just got out of flight school. This is his very first flight.
Is that really what you want to hear as a passenger? Yeah.
And then
like, I got to get off. I'm going to
thing.
catch the next one. Yeah.
But then the captain said, but you know what? You wouldn't have known unless I told you. And then I'm pretty sure, he didn't say this, but I'm pretty sure that as we were flying, it was a 2-hour flight from Dallas, that the co-pilot, first officer, the kid, was doing most of the flying while the captain was watching, right? Just making sure there's no mistakes. Because, when you have a long flight, the flight goes through different handoff zones as you go between air traffic control centers, right? So you have to coordinate that communication. Otherwise, you could like run into another plane or some nonsense. And so we made it to Vegas. And as we were landing, we landed with a hard bump. And then when we were getting off the plane, that young first officer, that young pilot was there, standing there, as we're getting off the jet bridge. And I said, did you land that plane? And he sheepishly smiled and said, yeah, it was me. So we had a good laugh about that because he did land the plane. Well, we didn't die, but maybe got nervous. Like, he didn't have the kind of fine touch that someone who's done it thousands of times, but he still did it according to the SOP. We didn't crash and die, right? So that's the way I view it. We're training up thousands of young adults in digital marketing. They're following our SOPs. Maybe they won't land the plane as smoothly as I will, but they're still going to land the plane. And that's what counts.
Dennis, first of all, thanks for sharing your journey and stories. I have one last question before I ask it. I just want to encourage people to check out BlitzMetrics.com to learn more. You have lots of great resources. There's courses, there's $1 a day. I was watching a bunch of videos that you have on YouTube as well. So check that out. My last question is tech stack.
Yeah.
You're a technical guy. I love to hear some of your favorite software and apps that you love.
Yeah. Well, there's so many depending on what you're trying to do. It's like asking, a technician for all the tools that are in their toolbox. I'll tell you a few of them. So I use Boomerang for Gmail as a way to keep track of messages so I never lose track of a thing. We have Basecamp for project management, storing all these different tasks. Everything gets assigned out. I don't believe the mind is good for storage because you're going to forget. The mind is for processing. So I have a project management system with Basecamp, and I always assign something out to someone else to own it. So I don't have to own it. If there's no single owner of a particular project, it doesn't get done. So that's just something I've learned. You must have a clear owner. And because of that, we have other tools that tie into this accountability. So all of our workers, they use TimeCamp, which is integrated with Basecamp. So all the tasks they do are tracked with the time, and some are paid hourly, some are paid salary, but either way we track the time, which, in a remote workforce where people are working virtually, they don't have to show up to an office. They don't have to work a particular shift, but we still have to have accountability. We have weekly status reports. And if you don't have your weekly status report, then there's no way to sort of have the safety mechanism to make sure that everything's going according to plan. And the way we do project management ties in with the way that we train. So we use LearnDash as our learning management system that integrates with WordPress. We have Infusionsoft as our email marketing system. We have as our favorite WordPress plugins, that is a WordPress plugin. We have Rank Math, which is for SEO of the posts. So every post is trying to rank for a particular keyword. Link Whisper. I use Descript as like the Swiss Army knife of video. It does everything, like 15, 20 different things, even like deep fake, even correcting things. I can take a podcast from 2023 and have me say 2024 because it does things like that. We use LeadsBridge to be able to push our CRM data back to Facebook and Google and to other sources so that the ad systems can optimize. We have customers.ai, which is a pixel that on the website When someone comes to the website, 30% of the time, it can find their email address, even if they're anonymous, and then send them an AI-driven email that's personalized. That's cool. That's using OpenAI's APIs. I love using ChatGPT. It's got DALL-E integrated, so it generates images. I pay the $20 a month for the pro version. There's a lot of tools I use, but it's not the tools. It's the framework. The more tools you have, the more important it is to have a process to tie these components together. So the process is more important. It's more important to have a Honda, Accord, where everything's the transmission engine, all the stuff is designed well to work together, than it is to say, I'll take a Lamborghini engine, Porsche brakes, Ferrari, whatever. Like if you have a pile of best of breed parts and you try to Frankenstein them together, it's not as good as having a system that was designed, all these components work well together. That's most people will try to follow us on any particular single tool and find it doesn't work because they haven't integrated it in a process with all the other tools and their people. So we call that PPP, People Process Platform.
Love it.
SOP.
Dennis,
the SOP comes before the tool. I'll just say that.
Yep. I love it. Dennis, thank you. Everyone check out BlitzMetrics.com, more episodes of the podcast. Dennis, we'll see everyone next time. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate you.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sand. And right now, I feel like 100 grand.